Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to an amazing tournament that started today. Welcome to the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour finals in 2022. So this is now the last event of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour season, and it's a one round robin where 8 great players are participating in the 7 rounds of rapid chess, but the concept is a little bit different. Every day we'll see 4 rapid games in the match, and then of course who is the best will simply win this beautiful chess event, although Magnus Carlsen is already the winner of the whole Meltwater Champions Chess Tour of the whole season so far. So we're starting now this tournament with the derby of the day. We have really here the clash of the titans, Magnus Carlsen versus Wesley. So, and we're skipping now in the game 3 because the first 2 games ended in a draw. The game 3 was quite spectacular, but the game 4 was even much better. Be prepared. This was simply beautiful chess performance by these 2 top grandmasters. So as I said, now we're in the game 3, and here Magnus opened with the move e4. Wesley's response was e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and after bishop to b5 we have the Rui Lopez on the board. So now we have knight to f6, the Berlin defense here by Wesley. So, and there are now many choices what you can do. You can castle, you can play d3, you can play knight to c3. Every of these moves I think is good, but of course every move leads into different sidelines. Here Magnus Carlsen played the move d3, solid structure protecting the pawn on e4, but this move allows many times black to develop in this beautiful way. Simply develop the bishop on c5, and you see this bishop is quite active. It's already hitting the pawn on f2. Sometimes there are quite wild tactics that could happen around the square, so from white's perspective you should be really careful. So we have now bishop to c6. This is a normal line. It's played very often after move bishop to c5. We're doubling up the pawn structure, but okay, black has here the messed up pawn structure, but notice how really great black's bishop pair is. So black has here really good control with both of these bishops, so at least a decent compensation for the messed up pawn structure so far. So in the continuation, kingside castling was played by Magnus Carlsen, and now knight to d7 here by Wesley. So there is a beautiful game. It was Hikaru Nakamura versus Magnus Carlsen, where actually Hikaru pulled off this move, bishop to g4. I wanted to show you how really wild the game can already become. Now h3, after h5 you have even this opportunity to hit the bishop further with the move g4, but now comes also a stunning line that I think you should be really familiar with the move knight to g4. After h g4, bishop to g4, bishop to e3. The game is really spectacular with queen to f6. We're threatening further here to attack the knight on f3. So it's really hard to play this game from white's or from black's perspective, but as I said, if you want to study this line of the Rui Lopez, please check it out, because I think you can meet it, you can maybe face it, and probably there are some opportunities here that you could miss, and maybe you could also miss some tactics for your opponent. So as I said, it's a really double-edged line which everyone should know. So here in the continuation, after kingside castling, knight to d7 was played by Wesley. So simply protecting now the pawn on e5 and also creating really a compact structure, because in the near future we can expect the move f6. But the move f6 wouldn't cause so much tactical damage, because still you have your light square bishop which controls the light squares. So it's not such a huge problem if you play f6 and then bishop to e6 on similar stuffs, because your opponent in this particular game, of course Magnus Carlsen, doesn't have any more the light square bishop. So it doesn't matter if you then of course play the move f6, because you wouldn't weaken the pawn structure too much, I think, in your camp. So in the continuation we have now c3 with an obvious preparation to play the breakthrough motif with the move d4, and now we have a5, and now bishop to g5 here by Magnus Carlsen, hitting the queen. And as I said, f6 comes with the tempo. You have to now retreat, but notice, okay, we have several light square problems, but in the near future maybe the knight will come on b6, and then you play bishop to e6, controlling this long diagonal. So in my opinion, so far also nothing special here in white's position. So it's really an equal game so far for both sides. So we have now bishop to d6, now comes this move d4, and now queen to e7 here. Wesley so is preparing moves like knight to b6, maybe bishop to d7, and even queenside castling, because queenside castling I think makes really sense in this particular position, or at least moving the king towards the queen side, because now we would try maybe some kind of an attack of g5, h5 after bishop to g3, maybe even trap the bishop. So we're using now here from black's perspective the dark square bishop of white in order to make further progress with our pawn. So we're trying to kick it away and also get some spaces on the king side. So here in the continuation, knight from b2 d2 was played by Magnus. Very nice development move. He's trying to get the knight on c4, maybe then after works to e3, f5. So these are the squares that white wants to control. Now, of course, the knights have also good chances in this particular setup. So we have now g5, hitting the bishop, bishop to g3, and now h5. The threat is, as I said, simply trapping the bishop with the move h4. Now we have h4 by Magnus Carlsen, and now after move g4, now comes a beautiful counter attack by Magnus Carlsen. We have here d takes e5, because if you play now g takes f3, this wouldn't be so good here from black's perspective, because first of all, we're taking out the bishop. You can maybe take out now with the pawn because the queen is hanging, but now look at this. After knight to f3, knight to e5, I think white can continue here with this move knight to d4, and notice now with f3, queen to d2, maybe rook to d1, the clear target is simply the weakness on d6. This would be, I think, the main issue in black's position, the weak d6 pawn, and also you see the bishop is targeting this square. So I think in this particular line, black could face really many tactical problems around this d6 square. So that's why after move d takes e5, here Wesley so took f takes e5, and now knight to g5. And this was a brilliant positional move by Magnus Carlsen. You see how he stopped simply black's progress here on the king side. I'm not saying this is now a winning position or something here for white. It's still an equal position, but I really liked how Magnus Carlsen stopped really this aggressive approach of Wesley So's, because he has now a powerful knight on g5. This knight can be only kicked away by the Darsko bishop, but the Darsko bishop is always stuck a little bit also to the defense of the e5 square. Notice that the h5 pawn and also the g4 pawn are blocked. They're not making further progress. So I think here the kingside attack that Wesley So played here is a little bit splashed. Now Magnus has, I think, more attacking chances with ideas of knight to c4, a3, b4, if of course black castles queenside. Notice if you castle kingside here, you have left now many spaces in front of the king. So this wouldn't be good if you now play the game like this. So it's really hard now for black to secure the king. So now Wesley continues with the plan. Knight to b6, bishop to d7, and maybe queenside castling. Magnus plays now a4. It's not allowing further progress by the pawn on a5. We have bishop to d7, preparing now queenside castling, and now comes a beautiful again move by Magnus b4. And this move is really brilliant. Here Magnus is not allowing Wesley So to breathe. He's not allowing him here to castle queenside, because if you take, of course, for instance, a takes b4, then you get this one, a5 hitting the knight has to retreat. You can maybe play this kind of a counter attack, but now with a takes b6, rook to a1, queen to a1, okay, maybe you can take out also the pawn, but look at this, the queen is coming into the game, and the c7 is weak, e5 is weak. Okay, this is maybe an annoying pawn, but I think this pawn doesn't have further support, so it wouldn't be a good continuation now here, this line for black. So let's go back. So Magnus pulled off here really this beautiful b4 move. If you castle now kingside, let's see if you castle really out of this attack, out of this queenside attack that Magnus played here. This wouldn't be so good because of this queen to b3 move. Look at this. You have so many squares that white can attack, so it's really hard to make this king secure here on the king side. Now after king to g7, with f3 we can break the position, maybe then play king to h2, rook to f2, and maybe some ideas of rook to f1, doubling up the rooks on the f file would be, I think, really a devastating position for black. So I'm not saying this is immediately winning for white, but I would be really unpleasant, I think, if I would have to play now this position from black's perspective. So that's why after move b4, here Wesley So plays, I think, a great defensive move c5. He's forcing now a reaction here on the queen side. Magnus simply takes. We have b takes a5, rook to a5, and now queen to b3. Again, Magnus is not allowing kingside castling, and now the king is a little bit stuck in the center. So nothing lost so far for black. Black has still good chances because of the beautiful bishop pair. So here in the continuation, bishop to a4 was played by Wesley So okay, he grabbed one pawn, but of course the downside about this line is that Wesley cannot secure anymore the king by castling. So we have queen to a2, we have rook to a6. This idea is clear. Somehow Wesley wants to retreat with the bishop, and then again attacking the queen on the a file. So we have now rook from f to b1, and now bishop to c6, attacking the queen, queen to b3, bishop to a4. Here Wesley hope maybe to get a perpetual, maybe even go into the drawish line. After queen to b2, now Wesley makes a huge mistake. He plays now kingside castling, and as we said, you see now how strange it is if you secure the king by castling like this. This is really not so good, because the problem is now, as I said, the spaces that you're left behind because you play too aggressively here with both of these pawns. Now these are clear targets of whites. Maybe it's not immediately clear how we are going to attack these weaknesses, but here in my opinion already a messed up position. The better idea is actually here even to go king to d7. Look how wild, for instance, this position is. Actually, you can castle here queenside by hand. That's the goal here. That's the thing that you should do. Now, for instance, so white is continuing the game with knight to f1 with a clear idea, as we said, knight to e3, knight to f5, knight to d5. These are still the targets, but notice if white attacks now the f5 square, the king is not there anymore. The king is not on the king side anymore. The king is on the queen side. And okay, many pieces of white are coordinated towards the king side, but actually black is getting out of the attack. And although black lost the privilege of castling on queen side, but look at this. This would be a beautiful continuation. We're playing rook to a8. Now after something like knight to e3, controlling d5, controlling f5, we're playing king to c8. In my opinion, this is a good position. Look at this. The king is secured. Maybe it's not an optimal position again for the king, but this is the way to go. Here I think the king would be much safer on c8 than it was, of course, on g8. And all this, as I said, you can occupy the f5, you can occupy the g5, but you're attacking air. You're attacking nothing here now from white's perspective, and this was a good chance now for Wesley. Actually, in this particular position, black should be even slightly better, in my opinion. So that's why here in kingside castling was really a strange move by Wesley. So, and now Magnus plays knight to c4. Magnus had a wild idea that he wanted to prepare. He wanted to play queen to b7, attacking the rook after knight to c4, queen to d5, attacking the knight. So this was the tactical shot that Magnus prepared here. But actually, what Wesley should have done, actually he should have gone into this line. Knight to c4 is actually perfectly fine. She should have gone into this wild tactical sequence that Magnus has prepared here, because after rook, queen to b7, the rook has to be protected here on a6. Okay, you're trading off now more pieces. We're attacking now the knight, and we're hitting the knight on c4. We will eventually take it, but now with queen to e8 and queen to e2 and bishop to b5, black is perfectly fine here. Black has regrouped. Black is now a solid game. Again, this should be pretty much equal, but I think in this particular scenario, black would at least defend the position, would trade off more pieces, and I think this line should probably end with a draw. But what Wesley saw after move knight to c4 did, he played now a huge mistake. He played now king to h8, and this is now not so good because here Magnus Carlsen sent some blood. Of course, he plays now knight to e3. Now knight to f5 is coming, and this is almost a one-way ticket now for white. Here black has now really to defend the position like a line. It's almost like a lost position now for Wesley because of the beautiful piece activity by this powerful knight on f5, knight on g5. Notice if the king would have been on c8, then both of these knights, okay, they're active, but they're not attacking so many things now. But now when the king is on the king side, it's a simple different story. It's a one-way ticket now for white. So after rook from f to e8 was played by Wesley. So we have now c4, simply continuing here the pressure on the queen side, fixing everything, not allowing c4 to be played by black. In the continuation, we have now bishop to c6, pardon me, c4, bishop to c6, and now after rook to a6, we have rook to a6, and now comes a new critical moment, I think, in the game. Here Magnus actually plays a mistake. He plays now the move knight to d5, and this move in the beginning makes really sense because we're trying to kick away the queen. If you want to take out the knight, we'll simply connect two pawns, which would be, of course, a space advantage in the center. Notice that the e5 is weak. We have now a double attack by the bishop, by the queen. The queen is also a key protector of the e5 square, so we're trying to kick away the queen, which is protecting the e5 square. But this was a bad move by Magnus Carlsen. I think here he could have already seal the game, I think, with the move f3. F3 would be really devastating here. Okay, this is really hard to see. I'm telling you just now a wild stockfish line. Of course, this is fast time of format chess. This is rapid chess. It's really hard to see everything here. But after f3, look how beautiful the game becomes. After g takes f3, you don't want to take, you don't want to close your files with g takes f3. Actually, what you're trying to do is to include the rook into the game. We're playing rook to f1, and we're trying then to play rook to f7. And there are no two choices what you can do. You can maybe retreat here, sorry, after move f3, g takes f3, rook to f1. You could, of course, take now f takes g2. This is one idea, maybe trading off more pawns. But now after rook to f7, the game is really spectacular. Look at this, queen to d8, and now the queen is coming into the game. As we said, knight to f5 is weak, so with both of these knights, with this rook on f7, with the queen, with maybe even the potential e5 move, here bishop to e5, queen to e5, again black is getting destroyed, so this is not a good game anymore for black. So you could maybe try, after rook to f1, you could maybe try bishop to e8, protecting your f7, but now after rook to f3, king to g8, queen to c1, again this idea, knight to f5 is coming. You could maybe bring more pieces into the defense, but look at this, knight to f5, you have to retreat. Look at this, knight to h6 is coming, king to h8, knight to f7, look at this, the queen is coming into the game. Look at this, you get even a beautiful forced checkmate sequence. First we have this discovered. I just wanted to show you one option, what could have happened. Look at this, how beautiful chess can really be when the pieces are dancing. Now after rook to f7, for instance, this would be a beautiful checkmate. So I wanted to show you just one line, how actually black's king really weak is because of the spaces that you left behind, because you in the beginning pushed the pawns too much. So as I said here, after move rook to a6, what Magnus should have played was f3, opening up the f file, and this would be a devastating attack with many of these pieces. But Magnus played now knight to d5. As we said, he hit the queen. In the continuation, we have now queen to e8. Maybe here knight to d5 was a better choice for Wesley. So after c takes d5, you play rook to b8, rook to b6, pardon me, hitting the queen. The queen has to retreat. You're trading off more pawns, and now we are playing bishop to e8. We're controlling everything. Still, white is probably much better. Still, white has a better activity, but I think in this scenario you're regrouping somehow. You're trying maybe to defend this position. Maybe in top grandmaster level Wesley can defend this. This was the way to go, but unfortunately after knight to d5, he again played a passive move, retreated now with the queen. The queen comes now on c3. Here notice that Magnus is trying somehow to sneak in here on dark horse with the queen. Knight to d7, we have now f3. Now Magnus realized his chances with this idea to open the f file to include the rook into the game. We have now queen to a8, knight to f7, a beautiful move now by Magnus Carlsen. Attacks now the bishop, knight to d6, and notice now we have this beautiful fork on c7, and from this point on it's game over here for Wesley. Magnus grabbed simply too much material. Here Wesley tried rook to a3, counter-attack, but as I said, you're simply too weak now on dark squares. The rook is hanging, and also the g5 is weak. We have queen to a5, queen to g5 is coming into the game, king to f8, knight to e6 here by Magnus Carlsen. Although here Magnus even missed a forced checkmate sequence. For instance, you could have gone queen to d8, you have only one square, queen to f7. We have now this one, you can play a check, again a couple of checks, and now the knight is coming into the game. You cannot protect anymore the g7. You can maybe just prolong the game by sacrificing some material, but now after queen to g7, this would be a beautiful checkmate. But okay, as we said, after king to f8, Magnus didn't play here the move queen to d8. He played knight to e6, but still nothing is lost. Still white is much better. White has a much better activity. We have king to f7, knight to d8, again a check, king to f8, knight to c6. We have b takes c6, and after rook to b7. In this position, actually, Wesley so resigned. There is no good defense anymore. You can deliver a couple of checks, maybe one check. The king is hiding, but now you can maybe try to include the queen somehow into the game, but when the knight is taking, you will lose eventually the game here on the 7th rank. There's simply too much pressure, and as I said, after move rook to b7, in this position Wesley so resigned. So this was now the game 3. We're skipping now to the game 4, which was really wild. I wanted to show you here one particular moment of this game. Let's go to this critical moment. I think it's very wild what happened here. Here was the moment after knight to e4 that Wesley so played here. Magnus Carlsen should have simply taken the knight. So bishop to e4, rook to e4, and okay, maybe I'm not sure, maybe black is even slightly better. The evaluation is about equal, but I would love maybe even more to play this game from black's perspective because of the distant pass pawn, the outside pass pawn that black can create. But as I said, probably here Magnus with the black pieces should have simply taken the knight, and this should be an equal game. But Magnus plays now a huge mistake. He plays now the move queen to g6. Can you maybe notice now the winning tactic here for Wesley? So try to see now the best continuation. Take your time. It's really wild tactic that Wesley saw immediately, and it's really cool. It shows really the power of combinations, the power of when the pieces are really compact, when they're playing together in beautiful harmony. Here, Wesley played a beautiful knight to f6, a fork against the king and against the rook. You have to make a reaction. If you lose the rook, I think with this beautiful rook activity, when with some ideas of e6, you could get destroyed, so it's not working. So the queen is also hanging, will trade off the queen, so it's simply not a good position. So here Magnus pulled off g takes f6, and now Wesley plays rook to g3. Brilliant tactical shot, and from this point on, white is simply winning. But look what happened here in this particular game. So queen to g3, f takes g3, rook to e6, queen to f5. Here Wesley so continues the pressure against Magnus Carlsen. We have now f takes e5, rook to e5, rook to e8, and now queen to g4. Here Wesley so delivers a check, rook to g6. Here Wesley takes, bishop to e8, and now after queen to f4, we have reached now this endgame stage, in which, okay, we have to say it, black has some kind of a compensation, has still the bishop and the rook for the queen, but the downside is that actually this pawn structure of white is mobile. We're calling this pawn structure mobile because you can really move it forward and you can really create dynamics. What you're trying maybe to do is get one of these pawns maybe to h6, getting the queen somehow maybe to f6, maybe even deliver checkmate. But the most important thing that you should not allow here from white's perspective is that your opponent blocks your mobility of the pawn. If these pawns are not mobile, then you cannot create any more attacks, because the queen cannot just attack the king by itself. So that's why you need support by at least one of these pawns. So as I said, if black manages to create this so-called fortress, if black manages to create this position where white cannot move pawns anymore, then actually this could be even a draw. And you know Magnus Carlsen, how he plays these beautiful endgames. Look how Magnus is really, just pay good attention how Magnus is now playing the game here from black's perspective. Really immortal endgame. So here a4, Magnus pushes the pawn further. It's good now to have these pawns on light squares where of course they can be protected by the light square bishop. So Magnus is slowly but surely building a beautiful fortress. So he's trying to glue all of his pieces together. He's trying to keep them compact, where maybe the bishop is protecting the rook is protecting the bishop is protecting the pawn is protecting the bishop. So he's trying to get the structure where every piece is protecting another piece. So this is now how you build a fortress. Of course, as I said, the downside about this position, and that's why this position is still winning for white, is that white has here the pawn mobility. But let's see now what happens. So here Magnus pushed the pawn further with the move g4. Bishop to Wesley pushed here g4. Magnus played bishop to c6. We have a rook to e6, and now after queen to d2, king to g7, g5. So this is a good move. We're still trying to create some dynamics in the game. Here in the continuation, Magnus passes through. He's trying to block, as I said, he's trying to block the pawn structure. And now comes the critical moment of the game. Here Wesley played king to g3, and look what Magnus is doing now. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now a drawish idea here for black. Maybe you can try to see somehow how to make a draw. Try to see now the best continuation for black, which is really wild. Here Wesley should not have played king to g3, but let's see the best continuation for black. We'll see then also what Wesley should have played here in this particular position. Okay, here Magnus played a beautiful bishop to e4, with the idea of course to play bishop to g6, and then also to get the rook on the 4th rank, where the rook wouldn't allow here the pawns to move, and where the rook wouldn't allow the king to come closer on the 4th rank, maybe on the 5th rank. So the rook has to now cut off somehow the king's ability to play. And this is a good maneuver that Magnus Carlsen pulled off here. He played immediately bishop to e4. But let's go back. Instead of this move queen to g3, here actually Wesley should have played queen to b4. The problem is now, if you play, for instance, here rook to e4, then you get this one, queen to c3, and you get this double attack. You get the attack against the king, and you simply trap the bishop. Now, after queen to b4, the bishop has to retreat. That's now the most important thing here. And now we're playing queen to d4. Look at this, king to g8, and now with the move h4 and g4, there is no protection on the 4th rank. That's now the main difference about this sequence and the sequence that Wesley played here. After move h4, g4 is coming. So look at this. For instance, you're playing now again bishop to c6, but now we're playing g4. h takes g4, and now we're passing through with the move h5. Okay, still you have worries with this pawn, but at least you have created a dynamic pawn structure. We can then afterwards maybe push the pawn on g6, but at least you are opening the position against your opponent's king. But now, after move king to g3, Magnus played now a brilliant bishop to e4. We have now queen to b4, but it's a little bit too late. Look at this. After bishop to g6, queen to b5, and now rook to e3. We have king to h2, and now rook to e4. The fortress is there. Magnus built a more immortal fortress here. Rook to e4. As I said, we're trying to keep the pieces glued together, really compact, that every piece is protecting another piece. Bishop is protecting rook. Rook is protecting the pawn. The rook is protecting the fourth rank. So now this g4 progress doesn't make sense because black is here a really good control, and you can just deliver a couple of checks maybe on dark squares here against the king, but you cannot make further progress. And this is really brilliant how Magnus Carlsen played the game. In the continuation, g3 was played, king to h7. Now Magnus is just playing with the rook, also with the king. We have rook to d3, queen to a4, but now here Magnus realized that he could also grab this pawn, and now again after h4 he again stopped. You see, he's stopping the progress. He's not allowing here a pawn mobility. If the pawns are mobile, then of course they can create further dynamics. But now after move h4, queen to d1, now again a couple of checks. Here rook to g3. Again, Magnus is not allowing here the king to come closer. The pawn is protecting the rook. The bishop is protecting the king. So as I said, you can maybe create a couple of checks or something, but you cannot include more pieces into the game. So that's why it's now drawish line. Here Wesley so tried a couple of perpetuals, tried here also to include the queen somehow into the game. Again, he tried this idea queen to f2, but again you have this defensive resource of rook to g3, and after a couple more moves the game ended in a draw. There was no way here for Wesley so to include some more attackers into the game. The king stayed always here. The rook was always protecting the third rank. The bishop is always protecting the king, and was also protecting the pawn whenever it was possible. Look at this. Also the bishop is protecting the rook, so no way that white is breaking through. So after a couple more moves the game ended in a draw, which meant that Magnus Carlsen won his game, won his match against Wesley so with a result of 2.5 points against 1.5 points. So really great game. I really liked also the first game in which Magnus played really awesome chess, but you have seen Wesley got out of this mess and castled then kingside. I'm not sure why he did that, where he had really a better activity on the queen side. He had so many beautiful pieces on the queen side, castle kingside, and run into Magnus Carlsen's attack, and from that point on it was, as I said, a one-way ticket. In the second game Wesley had really good chances with his immortal tactic that he saw, but only made a draw. But okay, Wesley still has chances. I think he's a great player in the tournament. He wins games for sure, so maybe he can also win the tournament if Magnus, for instance, loses some games in the later stage of the event. So great first day for sure. If you want to see more events that we have covered so far, check out our commented chess games. Here's the link of our whole playlist of some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.